Hi, I'm Candy from Quiltvine, and thank you for joining me for our log cabin sew-along. In this sew-along, we said we're going to be doing a traditional log cabin and an improv log cabin. I'm going to be doing both. You'll probably want to choose one or the other to do along with us, and then maybe in the future you'll want to come back and do the other one because these videos will be available whether they're on Facebook, on the Quiltvine Quilters group, or I will also put them onto YouTube on the Quiltvine channel, I guess you would call it. So if you joined us last week, we talked about our fabric choice and cutting our fabrics. Well, I had a little blunder with mine and I wasn't happy with everything totally the way that I had chosen. So I went back and did a little tweaking, and you may have followed it along on the Facebook group. And so I did change out my centers. So I decided to go along with the little, it's a shot cotton, it's a dark salmon. I don't know the shot cotton name for it, I'd have to look it up. But I decided to go that way in my centers. And if you remember from last week, I said I was going to cut my centers 3 inches, which I had done previously. Well, let me show you what I did. Okay, these were my blocks that I did from the fabric I told you I was using last week. And this was my center, and it just kind of fades in there, which would be all fine and dandy if it weren't my improv log cabin, but this was my traditional log cabin, and I wanted it to look traditional. So I wasn't happy with that one. And then you can see here this one too. This fabric has dark and light in it, so that one was just not playing well for my taste. Wasn't giving me that traditional look. So I think I took that fabric out altogether. Because here, again, it's looking dark, and I had it in with the lights. And this one, I actually had this one in with the lights because it read neutral, but it was certainly not light. So I've switched that one over and put that one into the darks. I had this one in with the darks, and I've switched that over, and now it's one of my lights. So what I've changed up was, I've gone with the smaller center. I've gone from a 3-inch cut to a 1.5 inch cut. So now my centers are a 1.5 inch cut. So it's a 1 inch finished. And then I've switched out some of my fabrics, whether they were light or dark. And now I've decided to go with a 12-inch cut block. So it'll finish 11.5, but that's what I did. So these are the 4 blocks I have done, and I'll put up a picture to show you the 4 of them laid out together. But I have 4 done. So what I did for this traditional one is I've got the darks and the lights. My center's a 1.5 inch cut, so it's a 1 inch finish. All of my strips then are either cut 1.5, 2, or 2.5. So this is what it looks like with the 3 different sizes. This one was 1.5, this one was 2, and this one's a cut 2.5. And that's the way I'm doing it. I know that's not totally traditional. If you're doing a totally traditional log cabin, you would want to cut all of your strips the same size. If you want to do that log cabin where it kind of looks curved, you want all of them one size, and then all of them a different size, and then that'll end up giving you like a curve. If you have any questions about that, you can comment or message, and I'll see if I can do that. But for now, hopefully you'll just kind of play along and just kind of wing it. If you really want a pattern, I'm not writing a pattern because the log cabin is not my pattern to write. I'm sure you can find free ones out there, and actually I'll go and look and see if I can find any to send your way. But if you're doing it with us, we just don't want it to be so exact. We want it to be fun. So that's what we're doing. So now I'm going to show you, okay, my fabrics. So I put them into 2 different containers. This is my lights. They're 1.5, 2, or 2.5 cut, and they're thrown in there. And I like to randomly draw my fabrics when I do a scrap. And then here are my darks. Same thing. They're cut 1.5, 2, or 2.5. So now when I stitch them, you know, if I know what I'm doing, maybe I'll do 20 blocks at a time. But I just did 4, and then I played with it and made sure I liked it. And I think I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to show you how I do this because I don't pre-cut things. I'm playing with the camera here to try to get it at a good spot for you. Okay, so what I did with these, I have my center, which reads very dark, and I put lights next to it. I started with the light. So I have the center, and if you're not familiar with the log cabin, it kind of works around in the circle. You have your center, and you go light, light, dark, dark, light, light, dark, dark, and you keep going around until you get it as big as you want it. So, with that being said, I'm going to start with my center and just randomly I'm going to draw. Okay, I'm going to draw out of my basket. Oops, that's a dark one. That shouldn't be in. Oh, this is the dark basket. Okay, I want a light. So, okay, here's my light basket. And I'm going to draw one. Okay, that's not a light. This was a light one that I switched to dark, and I missed a couple, I guess. Okay, let's try this again. Now, third time's a charm. Okay, so I pulled this one. Now, this is how I like to do it. Okay, I'm going to lay my strip on my cutting mat away from me. I want you to be able to see the bottom of it. You see? Okay, you see the bottom of it. So, if it has a selvage still on it, I'm going to trim it off. I'm going to just take a little ruler, make sure everything's nice and straight, and trim out that selvage. I'm going to throw it away. Now, what I have found the best thing for me to do is I'm going to cut my strips before I take it to the sew machine, but there's no measuring. So this is the side where I'm going to be stitching. So I lay my center on here. I'm going to stitch this, and I'm just going to trim this off. No measuring. Then I'll take this, and you can either lay it off to the side if you don't want to pull it again right away, or you can throw it back in your box. I'm going to take this to my sew machine. Now, like I said, if I were doing these, just me doing them, I would do at least 4 blocks at a time. But for demonstration purposes, you don't want to watch me make 4 blocks. I'm going to do 1 block. And some of you may even get bored watching me do 1 block. Now I'm going to press it. I've got that here behind me. Okay, so there I've got 1 piece on. Now I'm going to reach into my box, and again, it's going to be a random draw unless I pull this fabric. That's the only thing I do is I don't want 2 of the same fabric side by side. But you might not mind that. But for this one, I'm going for not 2 of the same fabric side by side. So let's reach in here. Okay, I got this fabric with the bird cage. I love this fabric. Okay, again, I'm going to lay this out here away from me. I used some of this yesterday, so it doesn't have the selvage on. Now, the piece I just did, the piece that was just sewn on, I'm going to keep to the bottom toward me. So I'm going to lay it on top. This just happens to be the same width as these, but it could be wider. I'm going to lay it on top and trim that off. Now remember, this is the side I'm stitching on. I'm just going to throw this back in the box, take this to my sew machine, and sew it on. I like to keep using the leader and enders here since I'm not chain piecing, since I'm doing just 1. Now again, I'll take it over here. Let me just show you. I'm going to press it, but see, I would press it. Okay? So I'm going to hit it with the iron. Now I've got 2 lights on. Now I need to go to my dark basket. Good. I always like to dig down where I can't even see which one I'm pulling. Okay, I've got a pink. This one was a little controversial. It's a little bit light, but it had more color in it. So I put it in the darks. Okay. Again, this already has had the selvage cut off, so I don't need to worry about that. Now, the piece I just added on is toward me. I'm going to lay it on top. This is going to be my seam because I added one here, here, here. We're going around and around. So I've laid it here. This is where my seam's going to be. And I'm going to trim it off. Throw that back in the box or the basket. Bring it over here and sew. I'm probably not going to show you the whole way till I get to 12 inches. Either that or I'll speed up the video because you're going to get really bored. But I want to make sure I'm doing enough that you really know what I'm doing. So now, that's the piece I just sewed on. Take it, press it back. So again, I'm going to go hit it with the iron. Okay, this is the piece I just added on. All right, I'm going to go to my basket again. Got me the nice gold piece. Gonna lay it out here. See, I've already used this, so the selvage is cut off. But just to show you again what I do if they're both, if I hadn't used it yet and the selvage ends are still on, I'll just flip it around to the other side. So here we go. I'll cut the selvage off. I want to make sure things are nice and straight. I'm gonna use my rotary cutter. Now, this is the part. This is the piece I just added. So that's at the bottom toward me. Flip it over. So this will be my seam. And trim this off. Pretty soon I'll need I won't need a bigger ruler. I won't. Because my biggest piece is only 2.5. Okay. This is my seam. And as I'm pressing them, I like to press to the fabric that I just added. So when you press in, whatever side you're pressing toward, you lay it on the top, set it with the iron, and then roll it over. So let me hit it with the iron. Okay. Now I've got light, light, dark, dark. It's time for a light again on this side. Remember, I keep the side piece I just added closest to me. So we go to our light box, draw another. Oh, I got 2 in my hand. And I've used both of them already, but let's do this one because it won't be beside, well, it is going to be beside it. But you know what? I don't think that really matters. Let's just show you that it just doesn't matter. See, it's going to be beside it here, but I'm fine with that. So, again, this is the closest to me. I'm going to just flip it over there. Match it up across the bottom, match it up across this side, trim that off. Throw that back in my box, go to the sewing machine. Cut off my layer there. Okay, this is the piece I just put on. I'll heat set it, roll it over, press it. So let's hit it with the iron. Okay, are you getting this? Does it get monotonous yet? Get it in your head so you don't even have to think about it. This is the piece I just added. It's the closest to me. Okay, I'm adding on to this, so I need another light. Okay. Okay, this piece hasn't been cut yet, so I'll need to cut the selvage off. Okay, again, this is the fabric I just added. It's the closest to me. I flip this over, line it up across the bottom, line it up here on the side that my seam's going to be, and trim this off above it. Oops, am I out of the, there we go. Trim this off what's above it. See, isn't this simple? There's no measuring. Okay. Stitch that on. Put my under in there. Put that back in the box. set it, or I will flip it over. Okay, I'm gonna hit it with the iron. Now, I don't want to bore you to death. I'm gonna keep working on it until I get it to be almost 12 inches. And then I want to show you what I do then. But I just want to show you, this is the piece I just added. So it should be down toward me. Okay? Now, what I do next, I do a dark. Because see, I've got light, light, dark, dark, light, light. Now I need a dark. Okay, let's use this end because the selvage has already been cut off. Lay it out there. Okay, this is this one I just added. It's closest to me. Let's flip it over. Line it across the bottom and across the side my seam's going to be on. Trim it off. It's really nice if you can keep a rotary cutter and a mat right next to your sewing machine. So let's stitch this. Okay, then I'll press that, and I'll keep going. I'll press that, and then this is the one I just added. Next one goes here, so it'll be another dark. Remember, light, light, dark, dark, light, light, dark, dark, whole way around. So I'm going to go ahead now and just keep working on this until it gets a bit bigger. Now my block is getting bigger, so I need to show you what I do when my block is getting close to the 12 inches that I decided I am going to trim mine to. So I'm ready for a light, and see I'm here, I'm in my corner of my mat where I've got the one. So right now my block is measuring about 11 inches by like 10 1/4. So for this one, I only need one more strip. If it's, we'll have the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it needs to be 1.5. Yeah, any of the strips will do it because I need at least a 1.5. So I'm gonna reach into my light bin, and what do I get? So probably 1.5 is gonna really be close. So I'm gonna preferably either pull one that's a 2 inch or a 2.5 inch, so I have plenty to trim off there. Okay, so my block's getting bigger. If you can see all this, let me put it up a little bit higher. Okay, so this is the one I just added on. I'm back to the lights again. So I'll lay it here, make sure everything lines up. Trim this off. Okay, and I'll stitch this seam. Press it. Okay. Now down on the bottom here is the one I've just added on. Put it here in the corner. So height now, it's measuring almost 11 inches. So I am good there. I still need a strip over here. I need another light. Okay, I'm at 10.5. So I need at least a 2 inch, but I'm going to pull a 2.5 inch one. That way I'll be sure this is my last one. So I need a 2.5 inch wide light one. So I'm going in here in my bucket, and I want one that's 2.5 inches. I think that one's only 2. All right, here's one that's 2.5. And honestly, if I don't have any that's 2.5, I only have one that's 2, and I need to do another strip. Let's show you that. Okay, if I did a 2.5 inch one, I'm good, I'm done, I trim it up, it's done. Okay, but let's show you what happens if I use one. Here's a 1.5 inch cut, okay? It's not gonna be big enough. So then I'll need to draw another one. And I might as well draw another one that's pretty thin. Maybe let's draw a 2 inch one. Is that 2.5 or 2? That one's 2.5. I want to draw a 2 inch one out because that's all I'm gonna need. That's another 1.5. Okay, here's a 2 inch one. Okay, so let me show you what I would do in this case if I did want to do one that was too small, or if I didn't even have one that was big enough. Because this, it's traditional, but yet it's not exact, okay? It's forgiving, we can do what we want. There's no measurements, there's no quilt police, we're having fun. So I'm gonna show you what happens here. Trim it, press it. Okay, this is the one I just added on. So let's see how wide it is now. Okay, it's only 11.5. I knew that was gonna happen. So now you know what I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna go the whole way around again. It's big enough this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add another strip over here. So I'll have 2 light ones side by side, or I could skip this side and go over here and add another dark. I think I'm going to do that. Wasn't my plan, but you know what? We can do anything we want. Oh, I love that one. Here I am being picky, and I told you that I just dig in, but I don't want one. I don't want a 1.5. I want a 2. Well, if I do a 1.5. No, 1.5 will work. Okay. So I've got a dark one, and I've decided I'm going to flip it over and do the dark one. I don't need to do one down here because it's already big enough that way. So I'm just going to do it on this side. I sure hope I'm not confusing you guys. This is supposed to be traditional, but yet it's kind of improv traditional. Wait till we get to the improv. When we get to the improv, anything goes. Let's see where I cut that. Back up. Okay, I'm ready to press that. Okay, now I don't know if you remember last week I told you that it's easier if you just make your block the size of one of your rulers. So I thought I'm going to make mine 12 because I have a 12-inch ruler. Guess what? I don't have a 12-inch ruler. Not home here. I have a 14-inch ruler. So you know what? I still did it 12. So if I had a ruler that was the right size, I could just lay it on the center and cut around, but that's not what I can do. So I want to trim it. I'm going to put my 1, up in my upper right, away from me. And I want to make sure it's past 12 here and past the 12 there. And that's my wiggle room. So I'm going to try and make sure things are as straight as possible. So see, I've got my 1-inch line lined up on that seam. See how raggedy those edges are? Let's just trim those off. And like I said, if you had the ruler the size you were cutting, you could just swing it around and cut the other 2 sides. I'm going to have to lift my ruler. What was my top right corner now becomes my bottom left corner. Okay. I want my 12-inch over here and my 12-inch down here. For some reason, when I get to this point and it's not big enough, just sew something onto it. But there we go. Here is a 12-inch block, mostly traditional. I've got my dark little salmon in the center. I've got the darks on this side and my lights on that side. Now I'm going to continue, since they are 12-inch blocks, I was trying to decide what I was going to do here. And I think I've decided to make a baby quilt with these. So I think, So I think I'm going to make 16 blocks. I think it will be 4 by 4. So it's going to finish roughly 44, 48 inch square. So that's our traditional. That's the cutting and the sewing of a block.